Hello and welcome. Today is the day, Lissette, to celebrate this course on artificial intelligence and musical creativity. The course has been, we've been preparing the course for quite a long time. Actually, the course will take place in Catalan, Spanish and English. I would like to thank Lissette Lemus, Xavier Satorra, Xavier Garcia from the CSIC Artificial Intelligence Research Group. We have met several times in the last month to prepare this session, which has been organized with all our heart and our brain. Many people have been involved in the organization of today's and tomorrow's session, and here at the Queen we are very pleased actually, because this is what we like, engaging in a dialogue between different profiles and topics that are not easy to, let's say, make debate. We have on board scientists, experts in artificial intelligence, artists, musicians, and those who are totally lost, who know nothing about the topic, and who are eager to understand how this dialogue takes place. We have two international guests from the Goldsmiths. Welcome, I don't know where you are. And we also have a lot of people following us here in the room and online, so welcome. Welcome to all of you. I will now hand it over to Lissette for more in-house, and she will be sharing more in-house information with us. Thank you and good morning. Hello, and thank you very much, Marga and Quinn, for having contributed to the organization of this course. Welcome to all of you here in the room and those of us following us through streaming. Welcome to all the speakers who will be presenting today. We will introduce them in the course. I would like to inform you about the artificial project. This course, at the end of the day, is a continuation of the artificial project. The project aims at disseminating knowledge on artificial intelligence through art, transferring the results of artificial intelligence research from universities and research centers, and disseminating and bringing citizens closer to art projects and projects led by companies in the field of artificial intelligence applied to art. The course is framed under the umbrella of the current debate resulting from the launch of new artificial intelligence algorithms. In the artificial team, we have been working for quite a long time with Xavier Satorra and Xavier Garcia, and we were expecting this. We knew that the development of artificial intelligence applied to creativity is an unstoppable process, not only due to the new existing models that these large companies have unveiled, but also because these algorithms and systems have been developed also here in-house by our colleagues in our universities and research centers. Also, many creators have developed algorithms which will be presented today during the course of today's session. Last Sunday, I had the opportunity of reading an article by Harold Daniel, published in The New Yorker, entitled "There is no AI." And I would like to read a fragment of this article where it says, "Anything resulting from engineering, cars, bridges, buildings can produce harm on humankind. Nonetheless, we have built a civilization based on engineering. So only by enlarging human awareness and conscience and participation, we will ensure that automation is safe. On the contrary, if we treat our inventions as hidden objects, it will be difficult for us to be good engineers. Understanding AI as a form of engineering and a form of social collaboration will allow us to have access to the control room, which at the end of the day is developed and designed by human beings. So this quote brings me to speak about the aim of this course, which is allowing creators to have access to the control room of artificial intelligence, as to use it in a responsible way, placing humankind at the center and putting the focus in a co-creation, person to person, person to machine, and exploring new pathways of collaboration between artists and engineers in this very interesting development and research field, which is art and creativity. So, getting a little bit more in detail regarding today's and tomorrow's session, well, the sessions are focused on music, and so we target musicians, engineers, technology experts willing to explore the potential of artificial intelligence in musical creation. We will hear 16 international and national experts today. We're very pleased to have them here, and we look forward to hearing their vision and about their work. Tomorrow, some of them will not accompany us, but we will have a co-creation workshop. It will be a co-creation or co-creative workshop, and it will be led by Matthew Jepkin, who is an engineer and a musician from London, and David Fernandez Salazar, musician from UAB Research Center or Research Park. And we are sure that the project will be the seed of interesting projects to be developed in the future. To conclude, we would like to thank UIMP and its Barcelona headquarters, Marga León, Ignacio Casanovas. Thanks for having helped us organizing the course. Also the Barcelona Music Lab Foundation and Crea Música. Thanks for your support. The UAB Research Park for the total support and enthusiasm they've shown. Julia, David, and of course I would like to thank my colleagues from the AI Research Center, Carlos, Ramon, and many others. Thanks, because also the FESIC. Thanks for participating and sponsoring the course. I wish you a very fruitful and thought-provoking session, and I am sure this session will contribute to using AI in a responsible way in creativity. Thank you and welcome. And I would like to start with a keynote presentation by Professor Madden Berno. Mark, sorry. Please, the floor is yours. Well, not yet. He is a professor in Goldsmiths University, London. He holds a PhD by Oxford University and the London College, and he is an excellent musician, an excellent jazz musician, and an expert in artificial intelligence. Welcome, Mark. The floor is yours, and thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, Lissette. I'm sorry I didn't have my translator on, so I didn't know what you were saying, but thank you for whatever you said. I'm very grateful. It sounded right. Okay, so it's fantastic to be here. Many of you will know that Barcelona is, along with London, my favorite city in the world, and I'm very privileged to have an honorary position at the AAA, and this is relevant to the talk that I'm going to give. I wrote this talk, I just was saying to Matthew at breakfast, just in the last couple of days, and I made a connection with the work I'm doing at AAA and the work I'm doing in Milano on music and emotion, and at the AAA on something called the value alignment problem. So I'm really especially pleased to see so many people from AAA here today. Sounding right is a very nuanced phrase in English. There's something about the tone, a gut feeling, an authenticity, a connection. So we say this, that sounds about right, or yes, that sounds right. The greatest, for me, living musician, he's not well now, he can't play, said this phrase: I cannot say what I think is right about music. I only know the rightness of it. So this idea of sounding right, I think, is really critical when we explore how artificial intelligence can support musical creativity. So it feels like we are in a jazz club with the lights and being on stage. So just think about, I'm going to improvise, totally improvise. What does it mean to sound right in music? Okay. I'm going to play with the AI at the end of the concert, not at the beginning. So I wanted to play on my own. Thank you, AI. But your time will come. That was funny. So let me try again. I'll do something completely different. I was trying to play something which sounded right to me. So let's go back to the slides. And I'm interested in exploring this question. So, in case you don't know, this is a very famous square in Catalonia, and I always play this video when I come to Barcelona because it was hosted by Carles Sierra. It's not going so well, is it, at the moment? So I'm going to play this. I have been a professional musician for more than 40 years, and there are some reviews about my playing which are interesting. Just listen maybe for a bit. This is me improvising. And I was having dinner with Ramon last night, and he said Miles Davis played in the same square. So maybe just where I'm playing. So I've had this experience of working as a musician, and I've also had less experience, but working as an academic in AI, music, creativity, and more recently working in ethics here at AAA. What does it mean to sound right as a musician? And again, I talked about that, but it's something that we spend all our time when we're learning the piano to develop a style and an approach to bring our personality, our internal emotional psychology as well to playing the piano. But also what I think is really interesting now is, as artificial intelligence develops, I think it really helps us focus what our values are as musicians. So of course I will show some technology with artificial intelligence, but I think critically what AI is doing is helping us work out, what do I care about as a musician, as a listener, and as an improviser? These are all taken just from The Guardian in April. The explosion of press around AI and music is just in the last 4 weeks. It's quite incredible that every time you open up the newspaper, there's something else saying, is this a threat to music? Is AI a threat? What is, and we're seeing moves, aren't we, by governments and by streaming companies about artificial intelligence. So what's the general mood? Seems to be a lack of trust about AI, lack of understanding about what training sets are being used. There's worries about copyright and the idea that somehow that you can put all of my music into a training set, suddenly the machine sees all the patterns, uses it. My sense of ownership, my relation to that data changes. There's a big fear about being duped. This idea that if AI created something and we think it's from a human, that we get annoyed, or deep fakes. So I'm interested in refocusing the challenge of artificial intelligence, not to mimic, not to create things which pretend to be human, but to bring out the human in me. And this is why I work with Nadine Osman and Pablo Noriega at the Institute here in AAA. And this is what made me think, just literally 2 days ago, the value alignment problem. Basically, this is the mission. This is Stuart Russell, who gave the Reef lectures on the BBC 18 months ago or something. It's the mission to build AI systems which are clearly aligned with human values. And so I think to myself, for the first time, what are my values? What are my values as an improviser? So just read that as I'm improvising. I mean, in a way, these are probably no different from what anyone brings to something they love doing. But there's an authenticity, there's a connection with a moment-to-moment connection with myself, an awareness of you as an audience, an awareness of the unfolding journey. And I bring a sense of energy and connection. And I also try to create challenges as well. So, just look, trying to... Something about trying to bring out the best in yourself. So these are my values as an improviser. But I also have values as just for music and as a listener and a lover of music. This idea that music is a lived form of human experience, that it connects us, that it reveals something about our internal psychology, emotional state. I care about the future of music education. I care that there is a future where people want to go to music college and study music. There is a problem in the UK, maybe it's the same here, where music is being taken gradually away from the curriculum in schools, and I think there's also a problem now that we don't provide the same level of one-to-one music tuition. In fact, we developed a whole project, Goldsmiths and the AAA, which really had that at its heart. How do we support more people to connect using technology with learning music? So, but this idea about creativity. So the title of the conference is Musical Creativity. And this is such an extraordinary word. I keep playing in B flat, I don't know why I play in E. I think it really matters all the academic disciplines, which is why it's so important we bring artificial intelligence with ethics, with music, with performance, and we explore these disciplinary boundaries. And one of the pieces of work that I'm very proud I undertook with my late father-in-law, Arthur Still, was to look at just the history of this word, creativity, in the English language, and its roots in the Latin and Greek languages. Post-war, there was someone called J.P. Guilford. And J.P. Guilford in 1950 was the president of the American Association of Psychologists, in the big journal, and published this very famous paper on creativity. And what he said was, this is the great unexplored thing about humanity, and we must put lots of money into it. And it was very successful. And it's this idea about being original, doing something original in the world, doing something that no one has done before. Whatever I play, but that's probably never been played before. Okay, so I'm being a little bit facetious because I have a very strong view about which version of creativity I like. But it developed into cognitive science, and then it inspired a lot of research in artificial intelligence. But the idea is that creativity is a power in the mind to produce novelty and originality, and it's led to some great work. But it also leads to work where we think about the AI as being a creative machine. And I think that's interesting. I'll come back to that, whether do we want to think about AI being creative in itself. But there's another older version that comes back pre the war, early 20th century, a very famous book called Art as Experience by John Dewey. And in this book, he says what matters is it's the experience of making work. And it's the experience of listening to work, or seeing work, or reading work. And what matters is not so much the actual outcome as the experience of the process of playing. And he talked about other qualities of what it is to be creative: a focus, a sense of engagement, a sense of inquiry as well. And it's kind of an experiment sometimes, improvisation. And then an awareness, and this idea of flow. Flow is really hard, but it's a sense of losing yourself. And certainly it's hard to do here. I can't lose myself. But if I'm playing a concert, I do lose myself. I lose all sense of myself. I am so inside the music. And the view that we take about what creativity is, it matters to our approach to designing AI. If I think of Guilford's creativity, of course it makes sense to think about independent, artificial, cognitive machines that produce original content. So it makes sense to think of AI as being creative. But if we think about the notion of Dewey's creativity, which is an embodied experience, then perhaps the focus should be not on AI as the lone heroic artist or musician, but as a tool, as an amazing tool for supporting human creativity. And just looking at that one word, it was incredible. So there's a paper called A History of Creativity for Future AI Research, which is, you might want to look at, that I wrote with Arthur Still. So it radically impacts our approach to artificial intelligence, what we think we mean when we say musical creativity. So I think it's a fantastic title that the organizers have put on. And my job is to provoke, I think in the keynote, is to provoke us to think about the words we use in science. And part of the problem, I think, in the press, so I don't necessarily, Matthew and I had a long discussion at breakfast this morning, is that the words that the press use to talk about artificial intelligence are often anthropomorphic. So we hear about the robot artist unable to make work, because she's stuck in Cairo. We hear about Beethoven's symphonies being finished by a machine. So there's a sense as well as that people working in music and AI, we have to be very careful about the language. We need to be modest about the claims we are making about AI. One of the great things about music is to play with other people. It brings out the creativity in each other. There's a kind of excitement, a challenge that you get from playing with other musicians. There's a sense of a shared experience. But this idea of a musical experience, a creative musical experience, is really critical as well. I love the process of making music. That concert I still remember very fondly, because there was lots of connections here in Barcelona with my band. It was new compositions, and I was very proud of this. We made a concert, we made an album from it, Carlos and I. Carlos Sierra, I should say. And that's another thing as well, that when we don't want to, I don't think, press a button and for something to be generated. And it can be done. The technology is there now to do it. I think we want to be thinking about machines which support our lived experience of making and listening to music. And I think that becomes then a challenge of design, which is made. So this is really fantastic for me, because I had to go away and think about what are my values as a musician. So it has to respect and manifest my values as an improviser. Remember, connection, authenticity, a moment-to-moment awareness. But I want AI to give me new forms of creative expression, new forms of being creative. So, again, being very careful about language. When I'm going to play with the AI system in a minute, whilst I don't think about the machine as being independently creative, in order for me to act with it, work with it, play with it, I ascribe the sense of musical agency, of musical creativity in that moment. So it's really tricky, this. So in the moment that I'm playing with it, I think about it as a creative machine. So I think about it as having creative agency. I don't think about it as being independently creative, but I ascribe agency to bring the best out in me when I'm performing with the AI system. And the other thing that I think is really important is that often in musical creativity, often in AI, what happens is that people tend to build systems for themselves. So the systems aren't often available for other people to develop and explore the AI systems that are built. And the other thing that I would say happens a lot is that there are lots of world premieres of an AI musical system doing something. And then suddenly we don't see that system again, or something else new happens. So world premieres are easy in some sense. But developing and sustaining a relationship with AI over the course of months and years, I think is the great challenge. So if I was to say what the challenges are for AI in musical creativity, it's supporting the human experience of making music, of listening to music. I would say it's being sufficiently strong that other musicians want to use it, and I'll come to that in a second, because there's a good example of this. And there was a third one, and I can't remember what it was. And that, yes, that you want to have a sustained relationship with it. That you want to, like with friendships and like with collaborations and like listening to people, listening to piano players. So these are really big challenges, but over the course of, Matthew, when did you first do this BBC concert? Do you remember what year it was? 2015. So over the course of 8 years, Matthew Yee King, who is running the workshops tomorrow, and I think is talking later about this system. This was the BBC producer said this is the first time that an AI had been used to play autonomously with a sax player, and I hope that you can hear some of it. Oh, that's annoying. It played the wrong one. How do I don't have them, so let me just hear that again. Just turn it up a little bit, maybe at the back there. sax. Okay. That was the applause, I promise. We didn't just edit that in. And it was interesting because, and we wrote a paper again, Matthew and I, on what was the experience like for the sax player? They didn't practice with the machine. They were live on British BBC Radio 3, big concert at the Wellcome Trust. And, you know, what the challenges were to make that a musical event. But we have spent 8 years now building on this system. Matthew, an incredible programmer, but working in what we call participatory design, which put humans, the human experience of making music, at the very center of the design of the AI. So here we are during lockdown. This is me giving a concert on the piano, or sorry, it's a recording, it's not a concert, that we then used for a talk for an organization called AI for Good. So this is someone in Australia, and me interfacing with the system. So again, the system had moved on and developed. You get the idea, and then just last year, this is one of my, so I was on sabbatical working here at the AAA, and Lissette and Xavier said to me, you've got to meet this amazing piano player called Carlos. He's really interested in what you and Matthew were doing. And he played this exact piano in my apartment and went, wow, I really want to use this. And that was that's really amazing. I don't know too many examples of a well-known, established, fantastic piano player saying, I'm going to go away and I'm going to develop a whole concert and a whole relationship with this system over months. I'm not going to steal the thunder because Matthew and Carlos will talk about that relationship later. But I'm just going to play you a little bit of the concert. Carlos said I could play this concert. Carlos, are you here yet, or are you teaching? Yeah. Okay. So Carlos will speak more about this. But for me, that was an extraordinary moment when Carlos decided over several months that he was going to wait and train this model that Matthew and later me had been developing since 2015. And here's part of the concert, recorded by Ramon. It's absolutely fantastic. This is available. I think Carlos will show more later. I mean, of course, there are some conversations between Carlos and Matthew and me during the process, but not so many. There were things that Carlos wanted in the interface, which I'll come to in a minute. Just listen to this. I think it's rather beautiful. I mean, people that know Carlos will know he's an incredible piano player. What I want to happen is to bring Carlos to London, that we are both playing pianos together and we have our AI system interacting with both of us. So that's my dream. I said this to Carlos yesterday. So we're going to try and do that. And then this evening, I'm going to be playing this system in a concert in Milan. Concert, and I'll be doing what I'm doing in a minute. So here is what the current interface looks like, and again, some basic things that have come through really because I'm a piano player and Carlos is a piano player, and we wanted to use the system. We keep asking Matthew for developments. Of course, we want to develop this system, so it's, you know, this is months and years. Matthew said he first built this system in 2015, so it was 8 years ago. There are some basic I'm not going to show you through the functionality. I want the talk to be a provocation about how we use words and how we think about AI in musical creativity. But basically this idea that you can play in a certain style. So I'm not going to play with it yet. The denouement is me improvising with it. But I could play a kind of like a much more improvised style. I can imagine building up something as me as in that style, or I could do much more kind of pedally stuff using a particular mode of a scale. So I can build different models of me as a musician in different styles, and then I can load those models later to play, which is something both Carlos and I, as musicians, both wanted in the system. So this idea of participatory design over months and years is a critical part, I think, of how AI can work for musical creativity. And again, it's something that many of you will know. It's called participatory design. It puts the musician at the heart of the design process of artificial intelligence. And there's a couple of other things that we wanted. This idea of quantization, because it matters. The kind of music that you do, the system quantizes those notes. So if I make that very large, the system would only play at certain times in the second. And if I make that very small, it captures too much of my style that I can't control it, or I don't have the same relationship to it. So that's quite a subtle thing that you play with depending on your mood. I also wanted this function, the probability function, again because I want control in a concert situation. I want to so what's going to happen tonight in Milan is I'm going to start playing, and then I'm going to bring the machine in to support me. Then we have a conversation, and then I take the machine out, and then I start the introduction to a song. And I want a relationship with it, which is not just sort of fading in and well, actually Matthew didn't want the kind of fade in and fade out, and so came up with this idea of the probability it plays a note. But again, through musical intention, my desire to do a particular way of performing, and then I can reset the model. So let's hear what it sounds like. But I want, just before I do, to go back to why this. I think this is ethical, this system. It's just using me. I think it supports me in developing new creative practices. So one thing which is interesting as a jazz musician particularly is you get used to playing the same thing. So there's chord sequence. There's a danger that you see a chord sequence, C major, F major, whatever, that your fingers become hardwired. And I don't want that. That's not creativity. Creativity is something about a self-challenge, about putting yourself in an intense state. That's why I think Keith Jarrett is so extraordinary. He's able to do that every time he did a concert. It's quite extraordinary. Not anymore, unfortunately. So it's only using content from me. It's put the human at the center. And it's challenging me as a creative musician to do something that I couldn't do before. So my values as a musician and a listener gets ticks all the time. Without us ever really, Matthew, sitting down and working out what our values are, this is something that we have developed over the years. And now the moment for truth. Okay, so I'm going to reset the model. I have to come out of the slides. Can you just about see that? So if I reset the model, here we go. Lead. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to play for 2 minutes, and that will be the end of the talk. So, it's, and it is a challenge. And the problem is that sometimes great things happen when you play with it, sometimes it doesn't, but that's the same in music. You have to take risks for the music to be meaningful and to communicate with other people. So that is the end of my talk. So if I have one final reflection, it's AI can help us work out our values as human musicians. And once we have those values in sight, it can help provoke new forms of creative musical expression and experience. So I hope that the future is bright. And I want to especially thank Matthew and my late father-in-law, Arthur, but the AAA as well, which has really helped link my work, working in the value alignment problem, with my work as a musician and working with AI. So thank you very much indeed, and let's move on to the panel. Thank you.
I don't know whether there are any questions.
No?
No questions?
Una pregunta.
Yes, one question.
¿Dónde está el micrófono?
Where's the microphone?
Hello? Okay, yes.
Are we doing the panel or are we taking questions, Lissette? What's happening?
A question. We don't have mucho tiempo. We don't have too much time for questions, but at least one I would like to present to Mark.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Thank you for the talk. Very interesting. Also, your experience as a musician is very nice that you have been working a lot from both sides. I was just, it provoked in me this kind of thought that maybe in music we can also learn from what has happened, for example, in visual art, which I think has been advanced, has advanced more, let's say, generative AI in that field. And for example, actually yesterday we were walking through Barcelona and we saw this exposition at the MoCo, it's called, and it was about NFTs and digital art. And it got me thinking that actually, you know, any of those art pieces could have been generated by an AI system, but you know, not with human intervention. And AI systems have already been getting there. I don't know if you've seen Midjourney and other AI systems. But the thing is, if there's no, even though you can produce an art piece that is indistinguishable from a human, I think humans are inherently tied to, you know, the social connection, the social component. If I heard a music piece that did not have a human intention behind, or a kind of, that I knew at least that someone had tried to exert his, I don't know, his values, his sense of, I don't know, creativity, I don't know how to call it, but maybe also as a member of the audience, I wouldn't be interested, you know? So I think I'm not too worried yet. I don't know your thoughts about this for when the time comes.
There's so much to say. I suppose that I think increasingly we will need to work in issues around copyright, and we're seeing that come much more into music, this idea that we can take corpuses and create new patterns from the patterns of existing work from humans. So I think that there are threats from artificial intelligence, very real threats that we have to take seriously. But your point is exactly what John Dewey said. I couldn't agree with you more. Art is experience. Music is experience. And that experience is talking about the nature of what it is to be human. And so, of course, it's philosophically and technically and even artistically interesting to see what machines can do on their own. But ultimately, what I want is the connection with other musicians and other performers. And I want to understand how technology can help me with that connection, with myself as a musician and with other musicians and other listeners. So I think I agree with everything you said pretty much, yeah. Thank you for the question as well.
Can I do just one more? Mark needs to go, so I think that we must start the panel, and later, maybe in the panel you can have you can do the question to the others colleagues and experts. Guarda la pregunta.
So, keep your question. So, we'll now start then with our panel. We will have Mila. In this panel, we will be talking. We will have an open debate. Moderated by Mila Rodríguez, journalist and cultural manager. She has worked extensively in the musical field. We also have Josep Maria Martorell, sponsor of the Barcelona Music Club Foundation, BML, and associate director of the Barcelona Supercomputing Center. Thank you very much, Josep Maria, for being here with us. And we also have Cristina de Propios. She's an artist, designer, and holds a PhD in artificial intelligence, in creativity and computational art. So be very welcome. We have Ramon López de Mántaras, pioneer in AI in our country and research professor of the Higher Council of Research, Scientific Research, emeritus, okay. And Marc D'Inverno, whom you already know. So Mila, you have the floor. And go ahead. Thank you very much. Thank you to the organization for organizing this luxury panel. I believe that practically everything that Mark, who cannot yet understand what we're saying, has said is what we will be talking about here. And I hope that the questions that come up are answered. So,
of course. Matthew, there are devices outside because you don't speak Spanish, I know. Yeah, at the back. For those who can't speak Spanish, there are. Sorry.
No worries.
Make sure everyone was included.
Yeah, so I think
I believe that the title of this panel proposed by the organization is this idea: where we're going to and what is the future of artificial intelligence in relation to creativity in music. But there's no doubt we can talk about the future. But this is a trending topic, isn't it? And it has leaped forward quite a lot in recent months, not even years, and it has leapt into the public conversation. So thinking about this panel and preparing it, I got the feeling that we took a very small, tiny part of this entire universe. So before we start talking about the future, I wanted to have the layout of where we are at the moment. So I wanted to have your perspective, your viewpoint of the main areas of work you're most interested in. And I thought I could start with Ramon because, okay, I got you off balance there, because you are one of the pioneers in artificial intelligence in Europe, or one of the first who started talking about or brought this conversation to the forefront. And my question is basically, how do you see this? What is your opinion about this evolution that you may have seen when or since we started talking about this? So where do we think we are right now, and what is the most interesting part to you beyond the big platforms everybody seems to be talking about? Good morning. Good morning, everyone. In fact, I do have a bit of experience. I started in 1975 to work on this. 75, so 47, 48 years is that. And I have had the opportunity of continue working and following the development of all this for many years. I have known the two moments of AI, which were a consequence of creating expectations that were just too high, that high expectations that were not met halfway through the 70s and then once again halfway through the 80s. These were two inventions, consecutive inventions between one and the other. And now we are once again in this exponential progression of what is happening with AI. We read new things about AI every single day, and especially this generative artificial intelligence. And when you look at what we're seeing in recent months, especially, there's been a great explosion, but now it has become more accentuated with these generative AIs everybody is talking about. And it seems like artificial intelligence is something very recent, maybe not for us here today, but for many people in the general audience. They never heard about artificial intelligence before, or very little, so everything seems to be recently discovered. In fact, these generative AIs, the ones that we see now, generative AIs, well, the famous GPT and other families of these language models that are so vast and enormous. But generative AI has always been done since the year 57, since 1957, 1 year after AI was born officially, which was in 1956. And when this concept of AI was set forth, Mr. Hele and Saxon were at the Bell Labs, and in collaboration with the city of Illinois, they had a computer called ELIAC. This was one of the first huge computers that filled up an entire room and consumed a vast amount of energy, and they were constantly breaking down because they were worked with different modules and not transmitters. So these men, they managed ELIAC to make up the ELIAC suite for a quartet. And they did it with a generative technique that was not as the one that is done now. It was performed for a string quartet, but the idea was similar. It was to predict the likelihood of the next note based on the previous one. And this could only be done looking at a couple of notes before. This is a second-order Markov chain. This means that you look back twice before you can look forward once. So this was generative AI, and this is what I consider to be generative AI. So this modern concept that we have now to create text, to generate music or images and even video and string quartets, it seems like something absolutely new and recent discovery, but that is not the case. It is true that the technique behind artificial intelligence, which are these huge models, very complex neuronal networks with millions, billions, or even trillions of parameters, this can be done now because of the huge calculation power. Pep knows more about this than me, but the conceptual idea and the basic idea continues to be the same as back then. In fact, these are not the only examples of generative AI, as many other things are considered to be generative as well. The simple systems based on rules and genetic algorithms and many other techniques, reasoning based on cases as well. And this is what I wanted to talk about. I believe that at the moment artificial intelligence is lacking, or at least this generative one needs to go in deeper into comprehension and the human sense of comprehending, because we've heard many times that comprehending or understanding in the human sense, they do not comprehend or understand. And they are not intelligence in the sense of our own intelligence. They are different. They are different things. Artificial intelligence are different to human intelligence. And if we want these systems to reach a level of comprehension that comes closer to ours, they need, or we need to go beyond what we have now. It cannot be a thing as superficial as what we see now. So I believe that in the future what we will see, or what we'll start seeing, are hybrid models between these more generative artificial intelligence or neural networks that are black boxes and that sort of thing. And we will see how reasoning will be added to all this. This part of inference or reasoning will be introduced in these generative models, and it's practically absent at the moment. So we need to add this additional component of reasoning, and things will go along these lines. And we will discover or rediscover things that we already knew. We will start talking again about cognitive architectures that will be hybrid models between these current approaches of generative AI based on analysis of vast amount of data with components that are more related to reasoning and comprehension. I think things will go along these lines, and these would be an appropriate route to follow. There's LeCun and Jane Tenenbaum and many people in the world of AI that are talking about this already and doing things. And my view of current AI and future AI is this one: these hybrid models to improve what we have now, although we're seeing very good results based on what we have now, but they need to go beyond. They need to be cognitive, more cognitive and explainable.
I believe this goes down the line of what Mark was pointing at, the relationship with human elements. I have been asked to speak in Spanish. Yes, we can. Yes, we can speak from Catalan into English. Yes, indeed. Please.
No. Yo, sí.
It's not for the translators, it's for the streaming, because... And people understand English, but not Catalan. Okay. Have they? I'm just asking. I don't know.
I can switch to English.
Okay, I can...
Bueno, sigamos, porque a partir de eso que comentabas.
So, on the grounds of what you raised, I would like to ask a question to Josep Maria. So, based on your experience in the Barcelona Supercomputing Centre, the question would be, what does artificial intelligence offer, let's say, to artistic languages? And we're discussing about defining creativity from a broader perspective. In the Barcelona Music Lab, you have somehow launched a debate about the music industry beyond creativity. So, how can artificial intelligence contribute to creativity? I will try to be brief because it's not an easy question. Nonetheless, well, I will try and answer. I will focus on the second idea you raised. As Mark said, there's a spectacular trend to defining digital technologies as an impactful technology on creativity, not only artificial intelligence, by the way. Barcelona Music Lab aims at developing a new industry on the grounds of technology applied to music and reflecting about the entire supply chain. And let me broaden the scope here. If we think about the music supply chain, not only the creator, right, because there's an entire supply chain behind music. So music has to be produced, distributed, programmed, enjoyed, consumed, sold, purchased, etc., etc. So at the end of the day, if you look at the entire value chain, you realize that at every point in the supply chain, there will be disruptions as a result of the digital disruption and the appearance of artificial intelligence. After, we'll speak about the future, of course. I'm guessing this will be the next question. Let me give you a couple of examples, which might be illustrative. Later today, there will be presentations on real-life cases, and the majority of such cases are related to the development or creation of new works. But there's another case about how music is taught, and music teaching is very important. The way the discipline is being taught will be disrupted as a result of artificial intelligence. Before, I used the word suffering. I said that all the supply chain points, let's say, will suffer the disruption of artificial intelligence, and instead of suffering, perhaps we would have to change the concept and say, how are we going to benefit from artificial intelligence, and how can we do a leap forward? With Ramon and Xavi, we discussed yesterday about an interesting point regarding the future of artificial intelligence and music. In the Financial Times, it was published an article according to which Universal Music has sent a letter to Spotify and Apple Music and all these platforms asking them to ban the access to the application to algorithms that trace content to train new music language, let's say, tools. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't have an opinion on the topic, I could say, but at the end of the day, it's an interesting example about to what extent the system is being disrupted. A company that holds rights and distributes music is asking a distribution platform to ban the entrance of algorithms aimed at gathering information, to train new models, to deploy new music. This is an excellent example about the disruption of the supply chain. In every sentence I have pronounced, there's a challenge related to AI, and I'm going to leave it here. Okay, so to counterbalance your position, I would like to ask you, what happens with artists? What happens when an artist decides voluntarily, willingly? Carla's case has been already raised. We also have Cristina in the room. So how do you willingly decide, yes, I am interested in working with artificial intelligence and using it as one more tool or one more colleague in the process, right? And before, we also said that, well, we have to be careful not to get lost in the process as an artist. And today, if you present a radically new trend, such as artificial intelligence, so how can you benefit as an artist, so to speak? Yeah, well, I guess that for those who are really into AI and those following AI developments closely, well, there's nothing new under the sun. We've seen so many images, new music works deployed or developed or designed with artificial intelligence. Probably we could have used other tools but AI, but the thing is that, well, AI has been used. And sometimes artificial intelligence is considered to be really intelligent. The majority of people believe that there's an intelligent machine behind, and it's not actually the case. It's like we give AI an added value, when in fact we are skipping other technologies, or we don't think about technologies that have been used for quite a long time. What's new about today's technology? Maybe the speed at which everything is happening, or the automation processes. But in terms of results, of outcomes, all the techniques that have disrupted the market more recently, from an artistic perspective, they are no novelty. They have not really brought into the table any really new element. We speak about the golden era of artificial intelligence-based art, such as, the auction in Christie's, which turned into a millionaire business. Well, of course, not everybody has had access to such technologies in the past. Today, even if it's still limited, it's much more mainstreamed, so to speak. So, of course, there was an important debate, a vivid debate, as a result of the mainstreaming of artificial intelligence in art. We've had a couple of excellent years with the GAN, the Big Dream, and, all technologies went obsolete very quickly because new ones were designed. And the challenge artists had was understanding what could be done with these new techniques. But I believe artificial intelligence is yet an extra software, like in the past we had processing, etc. So perhaps coming up with the different aesthetics, etc. Now it has been a stop. From an artistic perspective, there's been a stopover. I'm not speaking about new technologies, of course. New technologies are unstoppable and they are just fascinating. But now we are reflecting about what can artificial intelligence do in the field of art. And I believe there has been some sort of a stopover in the art business or in the art sector. And we keep promoting the same artists, the same old artists from 2018, 2020, who were already using other previous technological tools. When it comes to design, industry, and the more corporate sector, a lot of processes are being automated. Let's say an advertisement campaign or a graphic design. These tools can be used to come up with an advertisement campaign, but not so much when it comes to art production. For the time being, I believe in art, everything counts, everything can be, let's say, embraced. All the existing technological tools are to be embraced by us artists. Well, I would like to echo Mark's keynote, and I believe there is no doubt that artificial intelligence is a valuable tool for those using it. At the same time, I feel entailed to speak about the elephant in the room. Do we really have to be worried about the mainstreaming of artificial intelligence? Cristina pointed at the answer. It seems like the more we accept the use of technology in the broadest possible sense, technology defined in the broadest possible sense, and when technology is in the center of the public debate, well, it would seem like we are giving out power to a more, so to speak, capitalistic use of technology by large corporations and technological big fights. So speaking about the future, and here I'm interested in digging in a little bit, because Mark raised interesting topics related to one of the major concerns in visual arts and sound arts, which is static standardization. You pointed at this concept, right? We should never lose track of our self-creativity, of our inner, I don't know how to put it, our own personal language or narrative. You've given us a few examples, but again, in the field of music, there are the Spotify playlists, which are now being developed through algorithms, and more concerning or worrisome examples related to copyright issues, etc. So there's a double-faceted question here. How do you think the future will look like, and how would you wish the future looked like? Because somehow there is a battle between what we would like and what is likely to happen, and what are the main challenges that the technological system places before us, because at the end of the day, technology is rarely developed and designed by musicians. I would like to know, Mark, what is your opinion about this future, the likely future and the desirable future, and the conflicts that are to arise? Thank you.
Well, the desirable future for me is one where music is celebrated and appreciated and experienced by everybody in the world. I need the microphone. I can hear myself. Sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll start again. The desirable future is one where we celebrate what it is to be human through music, right? That's anything that we do which uses words that we use to talk about the human experience and that we put onto a machine diminishes what it is to be human. And I think in quite a profound way. And I still think there is a big problem with the way we use words to talk about AI. Doesn't mean we shouldn't be worried. Ramon was the 20th signatory on a very important letter about let's halt ChatGPT until we have more understanding and better cognitive architectures which we can put human values into so that it doesn't do things which more specifically into its reasoning mechanisms, which is what Ramon spoke about. What I don't know what the future looks like, but I think it's really critical that AI works with ethics, it works with musicians, it works with educators, as AI researchers, we think about this whole value chain that you mentioned earlier as well, is that there is this ecosystem which is going to be disrupted. But if we hang on to what it is to be human, here's the thing I want to say. Music is a really important way of having these discussions. Not everybody goes to galleries. Not everybody experiences artwork, really. Everybody listens to music. Everybody understands the experience of music, which is why talks like this and exploring what we want, where do we want AI in our society, is so critical. And that's why I think we've seen an explosion in the last month, particularly around AI and music. People understand the threats that it causes, but they want to hang on to what it is to be human. And actually, I'll say one thing. The more I work with AI, the more I realize how extraordinary it is to be a human musician. And so actually, there's part of this that helps us to celebrate what being a human musician is. So I think, hopefully, that the press will start having better, stronger stories about how AI can support the development of music, of listening and recording and composing, because AI can help with ideation. AI can do things and put me out of my normal patterns. There are things that I can use it as a tool, fantastic things that I can do. So I hope that what it does in a few months is it calms down a bit and we re-engage with the extraordinary thing that it is to be a musician and to listen to music. Doesn't mean we shouldn't be worried. My biggest worry is around sort of, copyright and large learning sets that no one understands. But this is human material. We look for patterns and we produce something. And as Matthew said to me, it's not surprising there are patterns in human behavior that machine learning can find, right? So let's just be really careful with the language we're using and use opportunities like this to think about the experience of music. Where do we want AI in our society? So I don't know what the future looks like. So.
Absolutely, I would like to open the question to all of you, to all the members of the panel, because at the end of the day, there's an underlying question, which is, what is our relation with AI going to be? And on the grounds of this relationship with artificial intelligence, we might experience one form of conflict or another. I don't know if you, Mark, in your presentation, you underline the idea that artificial intelligence is like an accessory tool. Is it an accessory tool? Is it a tool or yet another author with whom to engage and work together? Do you, the rest of you, consider that this is the future of artificial intelligence and the technology to be developed? I think everyone is looking at you. Okay, well, I believe artists have had a very, let's say, I mean, when it comes to copyright, it's not an easy debate. Who has produced this piece? Me? Artificial intelligence? So I believe this roller coaster will not come to an end soon. As artists love science fiction, and this, produces expectations that cannot be achieved, but I hope that the debate will go beyond technology, because the debate is not only technology debate, or a debate about technology. I believe artists will prevail over time. Today there's quite a lot of research about robotics. For example, the existence of robots that can work with you in the production of a picture or a piece of music. So when there is a body, even if it's a robotic body, there's this idea of collaboration. When it's only a software, perhaps we're more reluctant to accept that this is a form of collaboration with a machine. It's like us humans need a body, even if it's like a robotic body. I don't know. So it will be an accessory, of course. AI will be an accessory. Is and will be an accessory, but it's a handy accessory, isn't it? I believe it's interesting to consider AI like an agent, like a stakeholder, to explore the limitations of artificial intelligence, the borders of artificial intelligence, and it's precisely in this debate where art is produced. I would like to elaborate on what Cristina was mentioning. First of all, I would like to focus on a more technical element without digging too much into detail. What we are experiencing, especially the language models Mark was referring to, are based on the development of 3 pillars. The first one, the increase or the development of scientific and algorithmic capacity to program incredible things, and I believe Ramon and here has a large experience in this, and 2 other technological pillars, which are the available data to train models and the computation capacity needed to train such algorithms. So the message, I believe, is the following. The take-home message is, we are experiencing an incredible explosion of the last 2 pillars and the exponential growth of the available data and computational capacity. There's an interesting and famous graph published by OpenAI, without going too much into detail, where it is clearly understandable that in the last few years the computational capacity has increased. It's pendant, so to speak, and the increase is growing so quickly that it's not going to be easy to respond to the future computational capacity. We are all in a super high-speed train, and we have the feeling that development is unstoppable. And perhaps now we're going to be in a plateau, not in a plateau, but in a more horizontal curve, where of course there will be many innovation in terms of applications, use cases, etc. But perhaps the engine that is supporting the development of artificial intelligence cannot evolve so quickly. And perhaps we'll have the time to pause, to take a deep breath, and feel a little bit more relaxed. And when it comes to creativity, as Cristina mentioned, yesterday with Ramon we shared a metaphor that I really believe to be illustrative. I'm no expert in music, but from a technology perspective, I believe what I'm going to share is a good example. Saving the distances, of course. I was sharing my experience in chess, which is a discipline which can be extremely creative, very demanding intellectually, and quite exciting, well, for those who like it. Only probably 40 years ago, any human could beat a software, and now it's been quite a long time that no human can beat a chess software. Does this mean that chess as intellectual exercise and sport has disappeared? On the contrary, this has entailed new forms of playing chess. I know I'm going to be a little bit naive here, but I believe there are new ways of enjoying the game intellectually speaking, and the world top players have dramatically improved their skills thanks to the support of technology, which can even beat top players. Of course, there are important differences between chess and music and creativity, but I believe chess is a good example because we have discovered that as humans, between brackets, we cannot compete against machines. Yet we now understand that, we can enjoy working with machines or at least collaborating with machines. And probably the same applies to music. If we, let's say, engage with an algorithm that can, of course, beat us in some areas, but not in others, and probably we can get and obtain lessons based on this example. Yeah, quite interesting listening to you. I was thinking about the future of artificial intelligence, and the debate focuses mainly on the debate of humankind, of human societies. It's like we focus on a technical debate on the question and we end up being very anthropocentric. And the social debate is so intense that, we all go back to a more social-oriented debate. Ramon, you mentioned you signed the manifesto about ChatGPT. And the main concerns raised in the letter have to do with the implications that artificial intelligence can entail for humankind.
Yes, I signed the letter in spite of not agreeing with many of its content, because the content contributes to the hype of AI, talks about digital minds and AIs which are as competent or more competent than humans. And this is not true. I mean, and there is, then when I saw that some of the people who signed that I don't like at all, I will not say any name right now, but it made me doubt. Right? After all, I thought that signing it, and because of some of these names, basically, that this would put this issue of AI and all these models in the center of the debate. So it would be something that could be, and it happened. Actually, it happened. It has been crazy all these last weeks. Dozens and dozens of media asking our opinion, and Carlos and myself, we have been very busy answering them. So so I think this is a positive side effect of this letter, right? So that's why I did sign it. But I think also Josep was mentioning that now, Pep was mentioning that now we are in this train, high-speed train, and nobody really knows where the train is heading to. And I was going to say no driver, but actually there are some few drivers, which are the top CEOs of these corporations, right, that are driving this fast train, with showing a lack of prudence, which is very worrying. So it goes against the #1 item in the Barcelona Declaration for a good use of development of AI, and not only the Barcelona Declaration, but the Asilomar Declaration and many others, which being prudent is something very important. You don't let the beast alone to be used by 100 million people like they did with ChatGPT, like this huge experiment, and then try to put little patches whenever the feedback was hey, well, look what happens. This is unacceptable. No, this is the contrary of what has to be done. This is a good example of what should not be done. But of course they are in this crazy race to control the market, these huge corporations, right? So this is, for me, is a very huge. I'm very worried about this aspect, right? Regarding another issue that was before mentioned, I think that the AI we have today is somewhere in between a tool and an assistant. I wouldn't say that is an assistant 100%. Certainly, it's not a peer. I mean, you have this hierarchy of tool, system, peer. So someone, one like us, no? I would say that it's between tool and assistant. In the case of chess, mentioned by Pep, that might be already an assistant. But maybe in the case of chess, yes, but not in general. And it's true that in chess, I have seen quite a few papers, one written by a good friend of us, of Enrique and Carlos and myself, Ivan Bratko, who himself was in the past, when he was young, a top chess player. He's from Slovenia. And he wrote a very nice paper talking about the creativity or the way this new software to play chess plays, right? Based on deep learning and all that. And he says that, which I think he's right, that he's playing so improbable moves that makes this system incredibly creative. So from the outside, you would say, wow, what is very creative, because this is even for the great grandmasters of chess, they would never, almost none of them would dare to play this. Dare, that's a very important term, dare, because they would be afraid to play this move. But machines are not afraid of anything, obviously. Have no feelings, nothing. So they place this move, and it turns out that this move, that maybe involves sacrificing some important piece in order to gain control of the center of the board, because that is good strategically. So they do this more strategic, more than tactical type of moves, and this was very surprising to many grandmasters, and they say, wow, this is more creative. And actually, it's very important to notice also that when you see humans playing against humans, grandmasters, the percentage of draws is high, very high. But in the World Chess Championship of Chess Championship, the draws are not that high. They play more aggressively, but they take more risk because they don't know what is taking risk, so they just play. And it turns out that they are extremely creative. So in that case, in chess, I would tend to admit that this chess software, we could qualify this software as creative. I'm not so sure about other arts.
Can I just say one thing? It goes back to how we use this word creative. The machine can be... The machine can produce novelty. It can show a move in Go and chess that humans have not thought. That's really helpful. That's supporting ideation, supporting new approaches to playing chess. But is it being creative? I don't think so. For me, it's just a machine that does the calculations very, very quickly. It's been programmed very well, and it comes up with a new optimal strategy.
The move is creative, but maybe the machine is not creative. That's more or less.
So again, it depends. We have to be careful how we use these words, but that's all I wanted to say.
Puedo añadir aquí una cosa. Concerns and everything. Y sobre la carta que comentaba Ramón.
And regarding what Ramon was saying as well, this new wave of things that have come upon us now, and Ramon was saying that despite he's not agreeing with some parts of it, he signed the letter because, well, regarding whatever these systems are, whether language or music, we should request some of the things that we request from, and I'm going to use a risky metaphor, from a drug, okay? So no one, or most, would not dare to try a drug sold by a company saying that, oh, this works out really well, but it hasn't gone through any regular processes of a clinical trial. Maybe in some dramatic circumstances we would, but you understand what I mean. One of the things that this letter with some intent wants to claim is what Ramon was saying. We have left the beast loose, and we're launching tools without following a procedural scientific method that will ensure some things. And the second element Ramon was talking about is we have a colleague who has published a paper trying to talk about the explicability of what the algorithm does when playing. This use is a risky metaphor. Imagine that you get a drug that works out really well because it cures this or that. And how does it work then? Well, we're just trying to create papers to see how it does it, but it does cure it. I can assure you. I'm just exaggerating here, but this is to bring something onto the table. Inherent risks to use tools of which we don't have 100% of knowledge as assistants. Because as we train these systems, well, these systems are just huge, and all these are risks. When Mark was saying that the ethical issue needs to be very present, but what should we exactly and precisely ask from these tools? Because as a minimum, apart from who the controller is and the companies and copyright and data, we need to ask a procedure that will allow us to make sure and guarantee that the way of using it is predictable, and we should ask a minimum explicability of what the intelligence system is doing at that moment. Otherwise, as Ramon was saying before, machines just play chess because they're machines, and they don't really care whether they win or lose. But playing with humans is risky, and we should be concerned and occupied on them. Yes, but how can we shed light on artificial intelligence as a creative tool? Because in other types of art or forms of art, and in composition itself, in musical composition, piano can also be an obscure element when you don't know how it works, or painting or photography. So that's why I was asking Cristina before, is this a real problem? Because maybe we should start from there. We should start by saying that, well, we can't use this unless we know how it works. Or is it through the precisely creative use by artists, where we can actually find this imagination that we are lacking when it comes to bringing artificial intelligence out of the engineering world and to know how to use it, whether as an assistant or a helper? Cristina, well, are we interested in knowing, creatively speaking, why it has drawn out this image or that one? Maybe some people are interested in some, others are not. We are requested as human artists to provide explanations on why we've done this or that. It has a history, a context, not just an aesthetic. It's not a painting of a king. Contemporary art is something different. And art with artificial intelligence plays in this league. So some discourse has been attributed, apart from biases, of course, which is quite significant. IART has criticized this a lot and makes lots of problems of artificial intelligence very visible as labels, because it draws some conclusions that shouldn't be drawn. But this is just a reflection of human society at the end of the day. If you teach your child to say a word, he or she will say it. Where have they learned it? Well, we don't know, but they're going to say it because they've learned it from you. So be careful with this. And when using neural networks as well, many artists have this discourse of the mind of the machine creating this or that, and the dreams of the machine and the thoughts of the machine, and they attach this discourse because we believe that this machine brain is very loyal to the human brain because it uses neural networks. So these are the discourses that are being attached at the moment, but they are based on the discourse of AI and AI techniques, and it does not go beyond the technique. AI does not have its own discourse with its own experience, and that's why it's painted this painting or composed this song. It is based on some other things. So maybe we might be disappointed when we know how a song has been composed. That person has not gone through a heartbreak or anything like that, you know, or the machine hasn't in this sense. Technically, it is more interesting than creatively speaking, at the moment at least.
As Marvin Minsky used to say, they are suitcase words. Words, en català diem que porten molta càrrega.
In Catalan, we say that they're very loaded terms.
We are anthropomorphizing a lot all the time. I wonder sometimes if we, instead of calling artificial intelligence, it could have been called something else, avoiding maybe the word intelligence. I wonder if we would be now here discussing or talking about all these things, because calling it artificial intelligence, it's a motivation. It's to anthropomorphize, you know, this technology. I think this is one of the problems, because we have to be careful. Because words are important, so it's not, no. I mean, and we have to be very clear that when we talk about artificial intelligence, when we say intelligence in this artificial intelligence term, is not our intelligence. It's different from human intelligence. That has to be very clear. And when we say that a machine thinks, this thinks is not the same as human thinking, and so on and so forth. So we have to be very prudent and very careful about all this issue.
Sí, realmente no.
Yes, there are endless questions. I have more questions now than when we began this panel, but we have some minutes now for questions by the audience. I see there's some hands in the air. I don't know whether there's a microphone that can go round. And then there's a question there, and then another one here. Mark has translation, yes. Just wait for the microphone so that the translators and the streaming can hear you better. Okay, thank you. Well, I am from the press, from the Diari de Barcelona, linked to the Pompeu Fabra University, and I am studying humanities and journalism at the same time. So I am obsessed with music, and all this in general interests me widely. So I have a question that was for Mark, but I believe that any of you could answer it. And I am very interested in the part of the cultural sector or industry in the musical industry. Well, my question was, what would you tell a young artist, a music creator or a musician, or someone who has studied fine arts and who is in shock and panicking at all these news pieces that humanize artificial intelligence? What would you tell them? What would you tell this person who fears for their future? And when new technology is born, as you know, there's a huge movement accompanying it. And basically, they feel very much attacked and harassed by this technology. So what would you tell them? I would tell them they should make an effort to understand it.
You don't know something, it's what is your fear. Why you panic? I would say to this person, okay, get into it and study it and try to understand it and try to exploit it, because it can be in your favor. It can be beneficial for you if you get familiar with this technology.
I think this is a really important question. So, like you, I'm a humanist, and I've been, working in the humanities, looking at the history of the word creativity, has really helped formed my ideas about where AI should be in society, and helped me understand why language is so critical, as Ramon was saying. So I think I'm going to agree with Ramon. I think what the critical thing is for music colleges now is I do think there has to be some, not just about performance, but understanding how technologies are changing the nature of the way that we think about composition or performance. But we can still connect with what it is to be human. And as Ramon says, if we fear something and we don't connect with it, then we can't find the opportunities for technology to get new performances, new ways of reaching other people. So it isn't just all bad news. Ultimately, I think it helps us understand as a society, once we get through the hype and the language, that to be human, to connect with each other through music, is unmatched. An unmatched experience in life. And so I would be, first of all, talking about it from a humanitarian, humanistic point of view about why music is so critical. It gives us joy and a sense of self-worth. But like Ramon, I do think it means we have to rethink the nature of education for people at school and for people in music colleges.
Yeah, before going with the conversation, I think you have to leave. People are nervous there. You have an important show, so thank you so much, Mark. Y creo que Cristina necesitaba expresar.
And I think Cristina needed to express her opinion.
Otherwise, the system won't work.
A lot of artificial intelligence.
It's very absent-minded.
The wires are still there.
Terrible.
I believe that this has been happening for the entire our history. What happened with photography, and then photography was dead and something new came along, and we shouldn't be frightened because this is not going to replace. I'm talking about art, yes? Okay, art, field of art. A different thing would be design or other fields or practices within the creative industry. But as far as art is concerned, there is room for everything. It's like complaining about the creation of a new instrument to play. We need to get to know it. We need to explore it. There's very bad advertising in this, a lot of fear, of course, but for many years, there's the discourse being spread that this is going to replace us, and this is an additional tool. We need to think about it as being an additional tool, and we shouldn't be frightened about this. This is a new book, a new instrument, a new language, if you wish, with new possibilities, and we need to adapt to it, because this will continue coming, and this has happened throughout the history of art and the history of engineering, and precisely it is a very good thing to never stop, to get new styles. It's all about this. Engineering is this, science is this. We need to innovate and move forward. From the standpoint of industries, I believe Cristina's response is good for all, but 27, 28, 30 years ago, someone asked the same question, changing artificial intelligence with the word internet. What is going to happen? We will stop selling CDs. My song will be sent here and there. I don't know whether this is the same, but what happened? There was a lot of noise and disruption for many years, as some industries have fallen, some others have flourished, new opportunities, and I just believe it's all about getting on the wave. Some things will disappear, some new things will come up, and parts of the industry will be disrupted by these technologies. As in any disruption, there's opportunities to make the most of. And I want to make an additional comment. This does not mean that we do not need to criticize it or analyze it or being in favor constantly. We also need to be against it, of course, because it is very good to analyze mistakes in order to move forward. We need to be critical, and that is essential. Yes, we're out of time, but I think we can ask one more question. There was one around here. I have the microphone. Okay, so who has the microphone has the power. I want to be good. I want to be well behaved. But it precisely refers to this question and the response. She has asked for an advice for a young musician, and you've told them who's discouraged and dispirited, and you've told them to study the tool. And I read a few minutes ago something that Josep Maria Martorell also mentioned, which is that scientists don't understand how these tools of artificial intelligence work, what they truly do. So how can we give them this piece of advice of studying the tools if those who have trained them do not understand what they're doing? So maybe that's what I didn't properly understand. Before everyone gets nervous, I would say something more to that. I would say that this for me is an opportunity, and any technological advance is only this. So understanding the technology on which this is based is totally compatible with the problem of explicability of how some algorithms work. For me, it is interesting to approach this technology and trying to minimally understand its conceptual foundations, because by understanding these conceptual foundations, we could imagine new disruptions and adapt properly to them. A different thing would be, and here we would talk about mass language models, that for some specific cases of very deep algorithms and very powerful ones, as well as very large, it is not obvious to solve the problem of technical explicability of some things that lie within. But in no case can this be taken as a reason to say, no, technology cannot be understood. The conceptual foundations of the technology are perfectly comprehensible, and some people have been studying them for decades. They're two different things, yes.
An artist and made incredible pictures, and does not really necessarily have to know the details of how a camera works. So these are two different levels. I mean, you can learn how to exploit the tool or the system, the technology, but that doesn't mean that you have to know the very, intimate details of all the technology that is behind.
Yeah, but that's not how he put it before.
Sí, creo que
Gracias.
podemos como...
Yes. Short questions and answers. We're talking a lot about art. I'm an engineer. I work as an engineer. And when Mark talked about creativity, I felt perfectly ensembled with that idea. For me, engineering, computation, programming, when I'm programming, I actually enjoy myself. I'm doing what the composer does. So that same concern musicians get, I get it in the world of programming when we see these tools being developed. But what is the difference? I see this as an opportunity, as a tool that is empowering me, making me more creative and more powerful. So I encourage people who study humanities to see it likewise, to see it in the same way, to understand that art is not only music and painting. Science is also art. Engineering is also art. And the people who truly enjoy doing engineering and science are people who have the same spirit as us artists. Only that. I just would like to say that what happens is that creativity is not exclusive to art. There's doctors are creative, and engineers creative, a journalist is creative. They're all creatives, and the problem here is that the artist is creative, and that is the association that's been done. But the concept of creativity, I insist, of course, yes, we can say that a machine is creative if we understand the concept. And even so, there will be many studies on creativity, and you'll look at different concepts and definitions. A different thing is what art is. That's a totally different thing, but being creative, of course,
is an intrinsic component of intelligence. Everybody. We can talk about degrees of creativity. We might talk about that. Why not? Yes, not everyone is creative at the same level. when Schoenberg proposed the atonal music, the decaphonic music, he broke rules. This level of creativity that implies breaking rules and going completely different, or the cubism, instead of using only one vanishing point, several unlimited vanishing points in a painting. All these are people who broke rules, invented something completely new style. Well, completely new. You always create or invent something based on something before. That's from scratch. Nobody creates anything. That's true. But this higher level of creativity, which is unfortunately, I may say, or maybe fortunately, is not at the reach of anyone. So very few humans can do it. This is something completely different from not completely different from the more, let's say, standard ways of creativity. When we solve problems, we always use our creativity. So I agree that creativity is everywhere, not only in arts, not only in music. Indeed, yeah.
Pues sí, con esto acabamos, que vamos.
So with this, we will finish because the Artificia team is starting to get nervous. So thank you very much to all of you here, those of you following online, and thanks to the panel. We have an email for those of you who want to ask additional questions. We will receive them very gladly, and we will send you the response in the next few days. Those questions that have not been answered, and we will be back at 11:40. You can go to the cafeteria or just stay around. And we'll look at practical cases, at case studies.